Hello and welcome back to another new edition of Windows and Current Affairs, and today we talk about the civil society, the different successful initiatives that were taken according to the directives of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, new ones and old ones that have been on the ground for years. But in particular, on top of them is decent life. That is one very successful, unprecedented initiative. That idea was taken by President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi himself and directed for the people of civil society to take it by their own hands and try to fulfill it on real ground in reality. And the results were amazing. For almost more than 3 years or more now, Decent Life have been working on the ground in rural areas, informal settlements, services, different services, sanitation and health projects and infrastructure and housing projects, and all by Egyptian hands, by volunteers, Egyptian volunteers. And today we talk about Decent Life initiatives and some of the most important ones, upcoming ones. And as we all know that next Friday, 17th of March, is going to be Kitf or side by side, a collaboration of different societies of civil society and the volunteers. They're all going to form they're going to join hands and to celebrate the culmination of their achievements. And on top of them is Hayat Karima or Decent Life. Today we talk about Decent Life, and we talk about the successful, sure steps that were taken by the people of Decent Life according to the directives of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, and also the important steps and how have Decent Life succeeded in changing the livelihoods of the citizens, the low-income brackets, alleviating the burdens, helping people with different fronts, and paving the way for different projects and for people to achieve their aspirations and more. Very delighted to be having with us live here in the studio our dear guest, Dr. Motaaz Abu Zeid. He's a professor of international law. Good evening, Dr. Abu Zeid.
Good evening, Ms. Zina.
Let us start off by giving a full definition of Hayat Karima until this very moment, for more than 3 years now, and we are in a case of disbelief how such a simple initiative like that, made by simple Egyptians from civil society, ordinary people, they were almost on equal foot with the developmental project, with the government projects.
Yes.
Is it because they were backed by the presidential office and by the Egyptian administration? Is it because they have the urgent passion? Is it because they used to have all these aspirations way before President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi started it off, and they took the opportunity? What exactly is Decent Life?
Of course, as you said, apparently it's an initiative according to the efforts of the Egyptian, led by our President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, and of course it's a very successful one. But according to the definition, you can say it's a dream became a true. Of course, firstly, for many years, I think before the age of the new constitution in 2014, and of course the presidency of Mr. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, of course, there were a very long time the countryside and urban places was very neglected, insufficient services, many suffering for people, as you said, in infrastructure, education, healthcare, and all these fields. And of course, according to, firstly, I think the right planning for the needs and the simple or the simplest form of human rights for these places, to put the plan for development and for flourishing life for people in these places, which was estimated about 58 million persons all over Egypt. And of course, it's nearly half the population of Egypt. So of course, it was a very needy project to be achieved. On the other hand, as you said, it was a new door opened for the participation of youth and civil society to participate in the strategies and projects of the Egyptian government to achieve this project. And of course, Nowadays, we can touch these results according to finishing the first experimental stage or experiment phase of this project, and now currently they are going through the first stage, which is servicing about 18 million people in countryside or urban places. Yes.
So we need to stop and carefully and observe all the steps that were taken by this very distinguished initiative made 100% Egyptian, and take a flashback at how they started off, the important steps they took. They started off with the rural settlements, or with the informal settlements in rural areas. They started off going to do some sanitation projects for them, going to build schools, going to build hospitals, to try to find job opportunities or provide job opportunities for village settlers, things like that. What exactly were the main projects that made the popularity of decent life?
Firstly, it must be mentioned that it had a very great relation for the Egyptian strategy for human rights. And of course, both of them, the initiative of Decent Life or Haya Karima, and also the strategy of human rights in Egypt was going hand to hand together. In 2019, it was declared about the beginning of the initiative Haya Karima or Decent Life, according to achieve the dream of youth and their initiatives that was presented in many conference of youth. This was held and adopted by the presidential power and the presidential intention for President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to empower these youths and to support them to achieve these initiatives. And it was declared in a very great ceremony to begin this initiative about Haya Karima. After this, for about 1 or 2 years in 2021, it was declared the strategy of the human rights in Egypt. And of course, it was built upon a main pillar, which is the simplest form, as I said, of human rights, or the first base of human rights, which can be achieved according to the development of countryside villages from all the sides that you mentioned. And of course, this is one of the chain of sustainable development that can be done under the umbrella of the strategy of Egypt 2030 to achieve the sustainable development goals of the United Nations. Of course, this achievement, the achievement of this initiative can show all of us, and of course outside Egypt, the power of the Egyptian intentions, the power of the Egyptian youth, and of course the successful enforcement and successful performance for these initiatives and projects.
What is the secret behind that Upper Egypt is taking the lion's share from the efforts done or taken by Decent Life Initiative to develop Egypt? Upper Egypt have been taking a lot of effort by Decent Life to be able to effect development, effect vital services, effect educational projects, health projects, sanitation projects, you name it. And amongst them are very popular initiatives that were taken, minor initiatives like Nawartina ya Rais, welcome dear President, and we love you Mr. President. These were recent initiatives that were taken in the new Minya Governorate and were warmly received by the citizens there. Talk to us about those two initiatives and what is the secret of the great success that was effected behind those two initiatives, and how President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi was overwhelmed when he witnessed the development that was taken in very little time by those two initiatives.
Of course, it must be mentioned that according to Upper Egypt, it's a special case because firstly, the Upper Egypt take a very great distance from the Nile Valley, of course, here in Egypt, with a very great number of villages that was arranged or was put on the list of the villages targeted by this initiative. The second point, that many of these villages suffered a lot of time under the line of poverty, and of course this affects the chances or opportunities of employment, and of course all the social services that you mentioned, and of course the infrastructures of these countries, or this village. Also, on the other hand, after the beginning of the initiative of Decent Life or Hayat Karima, according to the results achieved in these villages, of course the people welcomed very much the efforts of youth, and of course they gave a greater space for the participation of civil society, and of course this was translated in the two initiatives, We Love You, Dear President, and of course Welcome, Dear President, as a welcoming message, or a very great expression about the acceptance of the result of these initiatives and the support of people, and the welcoming atmosphere they spread in the villages of Upper Egypt, celebrating the success of the initiative of Decent Life.
Right. How have Decent Life succeeded in transforming Upper Egypt and other rural areas from developing them to typical villages,
Yes.
to be that could be flourishing could be set as a role model, or a typical role model to be set on the map of development for villages and rural life, and according to the livelihood of citizens, and according to their cultural background, their educational well-being, their health well-being. I mean, how have Decent Life succeeded in doing that?
Of course, it was a very great effort from both two sides, the Egyptian government from a side and also the Egyptian youth from another side. And of course, the main point of the success of this initiative is the awareness that moved these youth to put this initiative as a target or as an objective to be achieved with this successful way. It's not a method to spend some money here or to develop a center field in this village, or to give those people some support to overcome a certain obstacle or some problems that they are facing in their village, but it is a complete plan to put this village on the road to future. And of course we can observe or can notice by time more and more successful achievements that can be achieved by the people in this village after beginning this initiative. Of course, when we are watching Egyptian youth and Egyptian hands and Egyptian powers and Egyptian finance supported these efforts, of course we can believe in our country. We can upgrading the value of patriotism according to this country. Of course, as I said, the awareness of the people to participate in these efforts can be widely taken by many people. And of course, it is a very great appreciation for the ideas and the efforts of new generations to participate, or to encourage them to participate in these successful initiatives.
When we talk about those projects done by Decent Life, those are not normal projects.
Yes.
Those are not projects who could affect development on only one sphere, on one front or one front, but we talk about projects and people who set their feet on a ground, having with an intention to transform the whole place into a role model, into a totally whole experience for other countries.
Yes.
So that other countries, developing countries, would follow the footsteps of Egypt.
Yes.
Do you agree or no?
Yes, of course, I agree totally with this. And of course, we noticed, especially in the two last years, two main ideas that must be mentioned. Firstly, many of the African countries, and especially through the Conference of Youth held by the Egyptian presidency during the past 2 years, welcomed the initiative of Haya Karima, and they asked how to repeat this plan in their countries and how to participate in this successful initiative. And of course, on the other side, having a great project as Decent Life or Haya Karima here in Egypt, of course, it reflected a certain image about how the Egyptian economy is still powerful, is still dependent, is still can be a place of confidence from the international society. Of course, on the other hand, as you said, it according to the initiative of Decent Life, there is a new vision for these villages to be put on the road of future. And this is empowered or began from the constitutional principles that was mentioned in our new constitution in 2014, the rights for new generations, that new generations must be served, or their rights must be saved for tomorrow, that they can complete these initiatives or these efforts to a more decent life afterwards. Yes.
What are the most, or what were the highlights of Decent Life initiatives that really affected development, according from your own point of view? I mean, like in the field of education, for example, especially in the
Yes.
Jadida, like in the field of women's well-being and women and children in particular, those convoys that were made by the members of Decent Life to promote the health of women and children. For example, fulfilling the request
Yes.
for the services, request of the citizens, low-income brackets, the requirements, especially that they suffer from used to suffer from many problems.
Of course, yes.
So if you'd like to elaborate.
According to what you discussed, if we mentioned the first definition of human rights, we can present it as it is the legal aspects for rights and the freedoms inherited in the human history and dignity, targeting flourishing the human being life. Of course, according to this definition, you can find that this initiative, or the points or the pillars of these initiatives, targeting definitely the main rights or the main human rights for the people in this village. As I said, it's not a project to achieve, as you can spend some money to develop this factory or this school, or to renew or to repaint these houses. It is a point of to believe that you deserve these rights, and you will get these rights, and you must save these rights for people after you. So according to this sustainable goals, as you said, empowerment of women, children rights, and of course medical care, education, all these bunch of rights can be pushed together according to the awareness that we are on our way to achieve the sustainable goals of development all over the world, according to the sustainable plan of the United Nations, and which Egypt had a strategy or had a plan to achieve in this field. So if we can notice this according to this point of view, of course we will have a certain or a gathering intention to help or to achieve or to support this initiative.
Right. From your own point of view, how do you assess the other, societies or the other groups, the other organizations of civil society, like differently abled, or the other societies that are serving educational purposes, like other societies who are empowering, women with different disease, like curing cancer, for example,
yes.
that has been there.
Yes.
People, other civil society organizations who are helping kids with different cases of, cases of who have been prone to cases of burning and stuff like this, Ahl Masr
Yes,
in
yes.
particular. So those are very, very successful, old-fashioned organizations that has been there for a long time, but they were paid tribute by the president and they were empowered by the president.
Yes.
That have motivated them to be able to help or stretch their hands to help other citizens.
Yes.
So give us your own assessment. How do you see that? How do you observe that situation?
Yes, of course. Firstly, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi declared in the beginning of this initiative that human rights that can be served for the Egyptian people is not only the political rights. Of course, it's not only, yes, joining referendums or elections or something like this. And of course, the Egyptian people made a very good footprint in this field. And of course, they presented a very good practice in political rights. But of course, many rights also must be mentioned or must be saved for these people. Social rights, of course, economic rights, of course, and as you said, the rights, all the initiative can be derived from the umbrella of Haya Karima or decent life. Of course, as you are working on the field of human rights, you can relate with suffering people for diseases, for poverty, for education, for children's rights, empowering women, equality, and all these targets or all these topics that related to human rights, which is covered by this initiative Haya Karima. And of course, according to the ceremony of beginning for initiative Haya Karima, it was declared or it was presented firstly by members or officials of the government, celebrities and many actors and many actresses and many famous people in the Egyptian society. Of course, many businessmen cheered in this ceremony, and of course, many heads of associations of civil society.
There were also ambassadors.
Yes, of course, and they were appointed as ambassadors for these initiatives. And this was not a show, but it's a declaration that it's an open door or an open road to participation from all the categories in the Egyptian society. And this, what I said before, it depends upon the awareness of the people. To how extent I can share or I can participate effort in this initiative. It was a very general invitation for all to participate, from all the categories that they can concern or can give a hand, as you say, to this initiative. And of course, according to this general invitation, so you can give your service for many fields, as you can cover all the included or derived topics or related main topics of human rights related to this initiative. Yes.
So how do you assess the initiatives that were taken to develop with the empowerment and enforcement of youngsters and raising up new generations, and especially those set by some members of Decent Life and other societies, civil societies, to raise awareness concerning different ethical issues, concerning awareness when it comes to climate change, concerning awareness when it comes to the environment,
Yes.
when it comes to education, dropping out from school.
Yes.
So how do you see those projects?
As you mentioned, of course, this can be referred to the Egyptian presidency plan was put by Mr. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi starting from the year, I think, 2017, by putting an agenda for every year. A year for women's rights, a year for children's rights, a year for disabled people, a year for civil society participation. And of course, this last year was mentioned for civil society participation, and of course, it was crowned finally by the COP27 conference, which we proved for the whole world that we can take the responsibility or take the advantage of controlling and managing this impressive event here in Egypt. And of course, on the other side, as we mentioned, it was put on the agenda as the year of participation of civil society. And of course, the participation of civil society had many ways to share efforts with this great society here in Egypt, as you said, by awareness and of course by financial financial support, and of course by training people for efforts or for topics and fields that they can participate in. And of course the awareness must be mentioned as one of the main topics of the activities of civil society participation, as they are more near to the people. They can deal directly with people. They have many information about regions and villages that can be reached by this awareness and by this training. And of course I think it will be a very good chance for civil society, firstly to develop the relation with the official or the governmental sector, and on the other hand they can achieve more success topics or more success project according to this initiative directly with people that they can deal with. Yes.
Of course, a whole development cannot depend only on civil society.
Yes.
But as we're speaking of modern life and modern policies and new changing the whole map of development for a whole world, not only in Egypt, because these ideas of civil society work was not initiated from Egypt. It was, originally initiated from Europe and from the United States, and we're trying to do the same things to cope with the momentum.
Yes.
So the efforts of civil society worldwide and international community, how important is it to serve humanity? I mean, talking about issues like the Middle East peace process, for example, the UN organizations, the conflicts in South Africa, for example, different conflicts in the Middle East, I mean conflicts in South America and in hotspots of the world. So how important is it, and how have the role of civil society and international community, I mean civil work at large, been able to be empowered to sort out political conflicts,
yes,
instead of the usual stereotyped ways, governmental ways? Do you think that one day civil society will be able to interfere to sort out military conflicts, very serious political conflicts between power countries?
Of course, the point that you are discussing now is a very important point. As according to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was issued by the United Nations in 1948, it classified human rights into 5 main categories: civil, political, in a covenant, and a second covenant for economic, social, and cultural rights. Of course, the civil society all over the world, as the universal view of human rights, was concerned or was concentrating upon the economic, social, and the cultural right, and this was the main field of the civil society participation, even with the governmental sector. Of course, according to this limitation of the role of civil society, they cannot interfere in civil and political rights, as you said, with a very great range or a very impressive role that can be counted as a participation in this field. Of course, if this is the field that were permitted to the civil society to participate in as economic, social, and cultural rights, if we can achieve a certain rule or a certain success according to this participation in this field only, of course, I think it will give an indirect push to and flourishing to the civil and the political rights, even without participation or without directly interfere from the civil society in these civil or political rights. As if you achieve any success for people in their way of life, in their education, in their health care, in their economic empowerment and employment opportunities, of course this will reflect directly and very soon on their political views, on their political awareness, on their political choices, and of course they can have a view, giving opinions, giving analysis, giving observations and notice upon all the international problems, all the struggles, fights, wars, conflicts all over the world, even the problem of the Middle East, as you mentioned. Of course, if I secure a certain way of life according to the economic, social, and cultural rights, this will reflect automatically for civil and political rights and will encourage people to participate in this even without the direct interfere of the civil society, as it's out of its limit to participate in serving human rights. So it is a very connected operation. If we begin with civil, social, culture, and economic rights, of course, it will be reflected for civil and political. And in my point of view, it's a direct influence or a direct participation that can civil society participate in these rights as civil and political rights.
The reason I'm asking that question is that because all conflicts now, I mean contemporary conflicts are based on economic interests.
Yes.
They are based on win-win situations. They are based on financial power.
Yes.
And other things are minor compared to these issues. But with the advent of the conflicts and with the advent of the pandemics and with the advent of digitalization and everything, the world, and even earthquakes,
yes,
natural disasters, the world have realized, and world powers have realized, the power of civil society and the power of humanity.
yes.
In spite of everything, no matter how developed we are, how rich we become, how economically reformed we could be, we still are in dire need for the humane part and humane side.
Yes.
So do you think that this could be able to effect some kind of balance between the economic importance, I mean economic power and balance, and other balances like humane balances?
Yes, of course. As you said, the human side is a very important one to face this conflict or to deal with this conflict and had a solution for these conflicts. But on the other hand, we must mention some points of power of the civil society, as they are more energetic than the official or the government side. They can move easily. They can move directly with persons. They are not waiting for some permissions, some documents, some decisions, some regulations, as work in the official or governmental sector can be managed. Of course, they can direct deal with people according to some surveys they have, according to some statistics they have, according to some opinions that they can gain directly from people. And of course, all these ways hardly to be processed or to be achieved by the governmental sector. So of course the civil society had many powers or had many hands that he can use in facing these conflicts, solving these problems, even natural disasters, as you said, more energetic or more effective than the governmental sector. So of course, besides the human side, so we can use or we can invest these powers or these facilities that the civil society have to translate it to new ways or new ideas that can support the efforts of the governmental side to face this problem. Even the civil society cannot participate in a direct way, but he can support the governmental side with these new ideas, with these new ways of thinking, with this new way of working or functioning, so we can reach the same result according to this new policy by the participation of civil society.
Hopefully, inshallah, and that's a
Yes,
very
of course.
excellent observation. I would like to thank you so much for coming to Windows and Current Affairs and wish you all the best. And I guess this would bring us to the end of this edition of Windows and Current Affairs. Dr. Motaaz Abu Zeid, many thanks to him, Professor of International Law. I guess we're going to be seeing again next week. Until we see you again next week with another new edition, that's a goodbye.